Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 34, I think it is. Yes, verse 34 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. This is the first of a series of 3 verses, 34, 35, and 36, in which Bhagavan is talking about about excessive learning. So what he says in this verse is, in Tamil it is, Makkal Manavi Mudal Matravagal Alpamatigaku Oru Kodumbum Anave. Miha Kalvi Ullava Tam Ullate Ondru Allah Pal Nul Kodumbum Ulladu Yoga Tadayai Or. What that means is, for people of little knowledge, others beginning with wife and children are just one family. In the heart of those who have much learning, not one, many book families exist as obstacles to yoga. Consider. That's the literal meaning. If we an explanatory paraphrase is, for people of little knowledge, intellect, understanding, or learning, others beginning with wife and children are just one family. In the heart or mind of those who have much abundant or excessive learning, not just one but many book families, namely families in the form of all the books they studied, which thereby fill and cloud their minds with a dense fog of intense and ceaseless thinking, exist as obstacles, hindrances, or impediments to yoga. And in this context, yoga means not only meditation or spiritual practice more generally, but also achievement of the aim of all such practices. Consider or know. That's the last one. Or means, in this context, it means consider. Why Bhagavan says this is to follow the spiritual path. We don't need a vast amount of learning. We need to have a clear understanding, and to get clear understanding, just a few really useful books or texts are sufficient. Truly speaking, what Bhagavan's own original writings should be sufficient for any of us. We don't really need to study anymore. Bhagavan's original writings it's less than 300 verses, plus Nana and 1 or 2 other minor things, like some introductions to some of the texts he translated, Drisya, Viveka Chudamani, and so on. But essentially, it's just Bhagavan's original writings are essentially Nana and about, less than 300 verses, maybe about 270, 280 verses. And of those, 108 verses are Aksharamai, which are they're printed in, each verse is printed in 2 lines, but actually, technically, they're 1-line verses. So Bhagavan's writings are relatively very few. Why Bhagavan didn't write more is that it's not necessary to have more. What we need is not breadth of learning, but depth of learning. We need to have a clear and deep understanding of the essential principles. Not that understanding is our aim, but understanding is a means to our aim. Because if we don't understand clearly what the path is, we won't be able to follow the path. The path is to turn our attention within. So what Bhagavan has given us is all we really need. So that's why in this and the next 2 verses, he's emphasizing the danger of learning too much. He also makes this clear in the 16th paragraph of Nana. In the 16th paragraph of Nana, what he says is, this explains very nicely the idea behind this verse. What he says is, he begins with the words "ennulilum." That means in every text. In this context, where every text means every text of Advaita Vedanta, we can take it in that sense. Since in every text of Advaita Vedanta, it is said that for attaining mukti or liberation, it is necessary to make the mind cease or make the mind subside. After knowing that mano nigraha in this context means restraint, subjugation, or destruction of the mind. After knowing that mano nigraha alone is the ultimate intention or aim or purpose of such texts, there's no benefit to be gained by studying texts without limit. So he's not saying here that we shouldn't study, but we shouldn't study without limit. We need to study enough to have a clear understanding, but not more than that. And then he goes on to say in the next sentence, this is a sentence structure that it's very powerful in Tamil, but it doesn't come across so well in English. But the basic meaning is, for making the mind cease or subside, it is necessary to investigate oneself who, instead how investigating in text, that's a literal meaning. If we slightly expand it, for making the mind cease or subside, it's necessary for one to investigate oneself to see who one actually is. But instead of doing so, how can one see oneself by investigating in text? That is, to know ourselves, we need to look within. We shouldn't be looking out in the text. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa expressed it very nicely. He said the Panchangam means the almanac, the astrological almanac. So he said the Panchangam will tell you when it is going to rain. But however much you squeeze the pages of the Panchangam, you'll not be able to get a drop of water. That's his metaphorical way of saying we can't get knowledge, the real knowledge, from scriptures. The scriptures will give us very useful information. Where we can get real knowledge? Only within ourselves. But we can't expect to squeeze that real knowledge out of the text. That's essentially what Bhagavan is saying here. We need to investigate ourselves to see what we actually are. Instead of doing so, how can we know ourselves by investigating in text? We can't. It's not the text we have to investigate. It's ourselves we have to investigate. And then he goes on to say, it is necessary to know oneself only by one's own eye of jnana. Jnana here means awareness. So we need to know ourselves by our own eye of jnana, implying we need to look within to see ourselves as we actually are. And then in the next sentence, he uses the word Raman just as an example name. So any person called Raman, it's just an example. It means any person. Does Raman need a mirror to know himself as Raman? So do we need a mirror to know who we are? We don't need a mirror to know who we are. Just like that, we don't need text to know what we actually are. The texts are useful to tell us where we need to look to know what we actually are. But from the texts themselves, we cannot get any knowledge. So no amount of sastras, studying no amount of sastras is going to, or philosophical texts or anything, is going to give us the knowledge we are seeking. In Vivekachudamani, Shankara talks about Sastra Jala Maharanya. Sastra Jala means Maharanya means a great forest of sastras. the great dark forest of sastras. From that, we're not going to get knowledge. No, I think actually Shankara says Sabdajala Maharanya, the great jungle of sound. Bhagavan, in his translation, he translated Sabda, sound, as Sastra, making the meaning clear. No amount of studying of Sastras is going to give us the knowledge we need. That isn't to say the Sastras are not useful, but we need to get the essential message. And for that, we don't need to read a lot. We need to read just a few useful texts. So Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham, or any of these works of Bhagavan are sufficient to point us in the right direction. And then we need to look in that direction. So, and then he goes on to say, oneself is within the Panchakoshas. Panchakosha means the 5 sheaths that we identify with and thereby conceal what we actually are, because we mistake ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. We don't know ourselves. But what we actually are, that is within these 5 sheaths, not outside. So oneself is within the 5 sheaths, whereas texts are outside them. Therefore, investigating in texts in order to know oneself, whom it is necessary to investigate, setting aside all the Panchakoshas is useless. That is, in order to go within, we not only need to reject the external world, the world outside the Panchakoshas, even the Panchakoshas themselves we need to reject. We reject them, of course, not by trying to push them away. We reject them by turning our attention within to attend to ourselves. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby withdraw our attention from all external things, and including the Panchakoshas. So, as I say, what he says in this sentence, investigating oneself in text, and that implies investigating in text in order to know oneself, whom it's necessary to investigate, setting aside all the Panchakoshas, is useless. And then he goes on to give a very nice definition of mukti. What he says in Tamil is, Bandhatilirkum tanya endru vicharitu tanyatata sarupate terindu kolvade mukti. That means investigating who oneself is, who is oneself, who is in bondage. By doing so, knowing one's yatata swarupa, one's actual nature, what one actually is, alone is mukti. So mukti is nothing but investigate what we actually are, and thereby knowing ourselves as we actually are. And then he defines what he means by Atma-vichara. This is a very important sentence, because a lot of people have difficulty understanding what is meant by Atma-vichara. Atma-vichara means self-investigation, but how do we investigate ourselves? That's what Bhagavan explains in the next sentence. Sadakalamum manate atmavilve tiruptikutan atma-vichara mendrupaya. That means the name Atma-vichara is only for always keeping the mind on Atma. Atma means oneself. So always keeping our mind on ourself, that alone is Atma-vichara, is the implication. Whereas dhyana is meditation, is considering, thinking or imagining oneself to be Satchidananda Brahman. That is, if we are thinking I am Brahman, that is meditation, but that is not vichara. Vichara is turning our attention within and keeping our attention on ourself alone. Not even thinking of Brahman, not even thinking of Satchidananda, attending to ourself alone. That is Atma-vichara. Keeping the mind on oneself means keeping the attention on ourself. And then he ends by saying, this is a very important reminder, Katrave anaiteyum orukalatil maraka vendivarum. At one time, it will become necessary to forget all that one has learned. Actually, we forget all that we've learned every night when we fall asleep. When death comes, we're definitely going to forget it all. We'll forget it all permanently. So we're not going to get any real benefit by studying more and more and more. All we need to know is a few essential texts like Bhagavan's teaching that point us in the right direction. If we understand that, then we need to put it into practice by going within. While following the path, often reading Bhagavan's works is a great support to us because it's constantly reminding us of the need to turn within. And as we go deeper and deeper in our practice, we'll gain more and more clarity. So we'll be able to understand the implication of Bhagavan's teachings more and more deeply. So it doesn't mean that we have to give up all studying, but we shouldn't be, as he says at the beginning of this paragraph, what is the use of, how does he put it? Nulgalai alavindri padipadal payanilai. There is no use by studying texts, that means sastras, without limit. So selected text, studying and grasping the meaning deeply, that is necessary, but it's not useful to go on studying more and more and more. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, again, he put this very nicely. He said, to kill oneself, a small blade is sufficient, but to fight and kill others, you need a sword and a shield and so many big weapons. So all this learning is useful if you want to teach others. But if you want to know yourself, you don't need all this learning. You need to understand the basic principles. But the basic principle is that the reality exists within us, and to the extent to which we turn within, we will thereby subside and merge back into that reality, which is what we always actually are. If we understand these basic principles, that is sufficient. We don't need to be studying more and more and more. The more we study, the more thoughts we get, and also the more confusion we get. Because clarity lies in simplicity, not in complexity. So if you read many texts, this text expresses it this way, this text expresses it that way. Why do they express it differently? Which is correct? Or which is a better way of saying it? So many unnecessary thoughts will arise in the mind if we go on and on studying. Whereas if we focus on studying only the essential texts, like Bhagavan's own original writings, and putting them into practice, that is sufficient. That is the small blade that is sufficient to kill ourselves. So I hope I've explained the idea in this verse adequately there. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So for our personal sadhana, as you mentioned, it's good to focus on Bhagavan's original writings, and also Guru Ashokove, right? So
yeah,
that reinforces
yeah.
our practice.
That is, Guru Ashokove brings out the implication in many of Bhagavan's works. That is, all that is in Guru Vasakakavai is there in Bhagavan's works in an implied form. But Guru Vasakakavai makes it very clear what is the implication of all of Bhagavan's own original writings.
Right. As Sadhu Om calls it, like sort of a lot of correction slips are also in there, right? I mean,
yeah.
Classic scriptures, and even for like sometimes it explains a bit deep on Bhagavan's works. Like there's one verse which explains the verse 1 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, even though he said that his real teaching is only Ajata, sort of something to that effect.
Yeah. What Sadhu Om meant by correction slips, Bhagavan, so many things in sastras that are not clear or that have been misunderstood or that are diluted truths told to satisfy others, as he put it in one of the verses of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham that we did recently. Sorry, I'll just get that verse. Oh, yes, the one we did last time, verse 33. Saying that Sanchita and Agamya do not adhere to the jnani, but that prarabdha does remain, is an answer told to the questions of others. So many things that are told in sastras are answers to the questions of others. That is, different teachings are necessary for people at different levels of spiritual development. But Bhagavan has clarified in so many places what the intended meaning is, or where he made it clear where what is said in the sastras is a diluted truth, or where it's been misunderstood. In so many things. So that's what Sadhu Om used to refer to as correction slips.
Right. And it's surprising that not only Bhagavan's explanations of, the theory and philosophy of existence, and also the practice, Meyin Yelbum Ade Mevum Tiranum, as Murunar puts it.
Yes.
That
is
so not only
in one of his Pairam verses, prefatory verse for Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Murugan expresses what it was he asked Bhagavan to write. Meyin ilbum adu mevam tiranam, the nature of reality and the means of attaining it, revealed to us so that we may be saved. That's what Murugan prayed to Bhagavan for, and Bhagavan's response was Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. So Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is showing us the nature of reality and the means of attaining it.
Right. And what is surprising is not only has one explained beautifully those things, but also even the other practices I found it, like, for example, how exactly to practice pranayama. There's better clarity in Bhagavan's explanations than in other yoga texts, that's at least that's what I thought, and then how he lays out the different bhakti practices, which is more effective than the other.
Yes.
So even in that, he brings a lot of clarity.
Bhagavan is the very embodiment of clarity.
Right. Yes, that's well said. So now I have a question. So that's about the original works and Guru Ashokove. And Bhagavan has also done translated some works, right?
Yes.
The Bhagavad Gita Saram, Atma-vichara Praharanam, Devi Galotram,
Yeah.
and Anma-vichara. Sorry, what is that? The work of Shankara that he translated.
Anma-bodham.
Anma-bodham, right?
Anma-bodham, Drikdrishya Viveka, Vivekshidamani,
etc.
Dakshinamurti Stotram.
Right. Of these translated works of Bhagavan, well, personally to you, which one appeals to you, and you thought this adds a unique flavor?
Well, I think they're all interesting texts to read. None of them can be compared to Bhagavan's own original writings, in my view. Bhagavan gives us so much clarity. But, for example, Bhagavad Gita Saram is a very useful text because most of the great acharyas of the past, the qualification to be an acharya was to write bhashya for the Prasthanatraya. That's for the major Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, or Vedanta Sutra as it's also called, and the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan hasn't written any commentaries, but Bhagavan has given us the essence of the Bhagavad Gita by selecting those 42 verses. That doesn't mean the other verses are not useful, but the very cream of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan has given us in Bhagavad Gita Saram. So that, I think, is an important text because the Bhagavad Gita itself is a very, very important work. But the Bhagavad Gita is like all the Vipassana, they cater for the needs of multiple people at different stages of spiritual development. So the Bhagavad Gita can be interpreted in many different ways, as all the original Vedanta texts can be. But Bhagavan has given us, from the point of view, the deepest interpretation of Vedanta is Advaita. That doesn't mean the others are wrong. The others are more, they're suited to people at different stages. But this, if you want to go really deep into what is the meaning of Vedanta, Advaita is the ultimate, the deepest of all the ways of understanding Vedanta. So Bhagavan, of course, teaches from the perspective of Advaita, the very purest Advaita is Bhagavan's teachings. So he selected verses that are most in tune with this Advaita perspective, or most not in tune with, most coming closest to emphasizing that Advaita perspective. So all those 42 verses, they're very, very useful verses. But even those 42 verses, they've been interpreted in multiple ways. I mean, every acharya has interpreted the verses in their own way. So, but Bhagavan has given us what is the essence. If we study those 42 verses, then we get the cream of the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Doesn't mean the other verses are not important, but that's the very essence of it. And ultimately, it's the essence that we need.
Right.
So that's an important one. Yeah. Devikalotram and Amma Sakshakara Prakanam, they're both very interesting texts because they're basically agamas belonging to the Shaiva Siddhanta school. But generally, Shaiva Siddhanta is a dualistic school. The reason Bhagavan translated those texts when he came across them is that unusually for the Shaiva agamas, these are very clearly expressing the Advaitic standpoint. So they're interesting texts for that, from that point of view, and very interesting, very useful ideas in them. So all the works Bhagavan has translated, very useful ideas in them. Dakshinamurti Stotram, of course, is a very nice work expressing the essence of Advaita. So we are fortunate that Bhagavan translated these, but I wouldn't say any of these are essential. If we grasp Bhagavan's own original, the meaning and implication of Bhagavan's own original writings, that is more than sufficient. The other things are just added extras. I mean, we're fortunate to have these. And particularly for those who know Tamil, they can read Bhagavan's beautiful, because Bhagavan translated most of these, not all of them, Drikdrisya Viveka and Viveka Chudamani, he translated in prose, but the other works he translated all in verse. And his poetry is so beautiful. It's worth reading it just for the beauty of his poetry and the beauty of the way he expresses these very deep and subtle ideas. So all these works are useful, more so for those who know Tamil, because always being able to read the original, I mean, Bhagavan's own writings is in his original way of expressing it is, it's always better when I mean, even the best translation can never match the original.
Exactly. Those are the questions that I had related to this verse. I'm going to just go. Anjay Lohia, you have a question for Michael?
So, in one of your older videos of 2022, you said, as the infinite whole, we have unlimited freedom. Since there is nothing other than ourselves, there is nothing that could limit our freedom in any way. But when we rise as ego, obviously our freedom is limited, particularly our freedom of action. Though our freedom of will is greater than our freedom of action, both are limited because we are limited. So this is what you said there, sir.
Yes.
My question is, you say here, both our freedom of will and our freedom of action is limited, though our freedom of will is greater than our freedom of action. However, elsewhere you have consistently maintained that our freedom of will is in fact unlimited. So why do you say here our freedom of will is also limited?
It's obviously, when we are limited, we cannot have unlimited freedom. So, but relatively speaking, we are free to want whatever we want. No one can make us want what we don't want. No one can stop us wanting what we do want. We may want to stop wanting what we want, but it's because of the strength of our vasanas. Often it takes time and practice of the Atma-vichara and self-investigation, self-surrender to slowly weaken our Vishaya vasanas. So our freedom of will is of course it's limited, but it's relatively unlimited in that we cannot, if I want something, I can't say it's because someone else made me want it. If we really want something, it's we who want it. It's not someone else. So in that sense, we have more freedom of will than we have freedom of action. Freedom of action, we are limited by physical constraints. There's a limit to the weight we can lift according to our physical strength. There's a limit to, we can't fly like a bird in the sky without the aid of some sort of machine to help us. So there's so many limits on our physical limits on our actions, but at least for bodily actions, the freedom of that is, the will is subtler. The will is the subtlest element of the mind. So will is subtler than the gross elements of the mind. The mind is subtler than the speech, and the speech is subtler than the body. So there's great, with the subtler things, there's more power and more freedom. But I may have said sometimes that our freedom of will is unlimited, but I'm not, that's only, it is relatively unlimited. It's not absolutely unlimited. It's not, we can't say we have infinite freedom of will.
So the infinite freedom of will is our love, the infinite love which we have. In our real nature, that is only
Our
infinite.
real nature is infinitely free, yes. That infinite love, yes.
In that
As ego, our will is limited.
As ego, our will is limited, but it is relatively unlimited compared to our freedom of action.
Yes.
Compared to our freedom of action.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank
you. So along those lines, so is it fair to say that our will is limited to the extent of what you know and what you can imagine?
Yes, yeah, we can say that also. But I mean, once we rise as ego, we limit ourselves as a person. So that sets limits on everything. Right. Just like Bhagavan explained, we can't, in Ashtakam, Bhagavan compares meditating on, trying to meditate on God as formless, like wandering over the world trying to see the sky. We can't conceive of God as formless because any conception we have is a mental form. So trying to meditate on God as formless is futile. If we want to meditate on God as formless, we need to meditate on ourselves, what he calls thinking without thinking.
Right.
And one more thing in reply to Sanjay's question, this thing about our real nature is to have unlimited freedom. This is something Sadhu Om explains very nicely in the karma chapter, or the third chapter of the supplement of the Path of Sri Ramana.
Yeah. Exactly. Beautifully explains that.
In fact,
So there's a lot.
he explains karma in a way that is radically different how it's usually explained, because usually when karma is explained, it begins from the standpoint that we're a jiva. But Sadhu Om goes right back to the starting point. What we actually are is Brahman. And as Brahman, we have unlimited freedom. So when we rise as ego, our freedom is limited, but we are always free. That is, it's just like when we rise as ego, our being is limited. We seem to be limited to this body. So we were born so many years ago, and we're going to, some years hence, or days or minutes or seconds or whatever, we don't know, we're going to die. So our being is limited in time. It's limited in space. I'm here, I'm not there. So we set limits on our being. We set limits on our awareness, our knowledge. The chit is limited. We set limits on our happiness. So we experience some happiness and some misery. So like that, our freedom is also limited because of rising as ego. But even when we rise as ego, what we actually are is always unlimited. So our real nature is unlimited freedom. As Sadhu Om explains, for the simple reason that we alone are what actually exists. There's nothing other than ourselves. Yatharthamai Uڵḷadu Atma-vichara, as Bhagavan says in the paragraph of Nana. What actually exists is only Atma-vichara. So there's nothing other than ourselves as we actually are. So there's nothing that can limit our freedom. We are infinite. Our freedom is infinite. Our being is infinite. Our awareness is infinite. Our happiness is infinite.
Right.
Even to say our being, our awareness, that is, we are unlimited being, we are unlimited awareness, we are unlimited happiness, we are unlimited freedom. That is what we actually are.
Thank you, Michael. Yesterday, Bruce was bringing up verse 61 of Aksharamana Malai. Bruce, do you want to go ahead and ask your question regarding that verse?
Sure. It's one thing is I translated the verse slightly differently, but I wouldn't call it a translation. It's more a reaction to the verse. And the way I was working it, I said, "Oh, Arunachala, of what use are fruits conditions?" And so to explain what I'm saying, my question is to Arunachala Shiva, nothing exists other than you, so that the rightness or rottenness exists only in the devotee's mind. It's relative only to the devotee's mind. We as devotees want to show our worthiness. This puts us on the scale of value so that we're having to evaluate ourselves. Now, that might have a place in vichara. Maybe you'll have a view on that. Ramakrishna, his teacher said to him, if I recall correctly, he said, "We must polish the vessel so that it shines." And Ramakrishna replied to that comment, "Why polish what is already gold?" So I just wanted to get your response to those.
Okay. That is, Aksharam is written from a particular point of view. This is love poetry. So this is the lover talking to her beloved, and sometimes she takes the perspective. Sometimes it becomes a love quarrel. That is, the lover can chide her beloved. So this is the lover chiding her beloved. So we need to understand this in the context of the whole song. In one of the early verses, the third verse, he says, Aham buhan dietun ahaguhe siriyai amavita dengol Arunachala. That is, Arunachala entered his home or his heart, or her home or her heart, and took her away and kept her a prisoner in the cave of his heart. So the beloved has seized the young girl from her home and taken her away, and she's of course willingly been taken away. She wanted to elope with him, so he came and he seized her and he took her, and now he's keeping her a prisoner in the cave of his heart. If he doesn't, having taken her away from her home, there's no way she can go back. If she goes back, no one will believe that she's a chaste virgin, so she can't go back to the world. There's no way back for her. So she's come hoping to gain that union with her beloved. So if her beloved doesn't unite with her, he says in another verse, if you do not unite with me, destroying me now, is this your manliness? So this is written in the same spirit. There's no use in a fruit that is overripe. That is, once a fruit becomes overripe, it's no longer of any use. And it also has a double meaning. When a girl is young, she's in the ripe condition. If beloved elopes with her and then just keeps her without uniting with her until she becomes old, once she's old, she's no longer of any use. That implication is already no longer of any use in the sense she's no longer of childbearing age. So it's got that implication there. So a fruit, once it's overripe, it's of no use. A virgin, once she goes beyond a certain age, she's no longer of a childbearing age. All these sort of implications are there. So padatil means in a state, but it implies in the state of ripeness. Now he's in a ripe condition. So now is the time, or she is in a ripe condition. Now is the time for the beloved to come and taste her goodness, her sweetness, and consume her. So this is a prayer to be consumed completely. So that is the bhava. What you mention about, you mentioned something about whatever be our condition, for Arunachala is nothing. Bhagavan expresses that in another verse. There's a verse, Pullari Vedurai, Nallari Vedurai. Wait a second, find it. That's verse 68. Pullari Vedurai, Nallari Vedurai, Pulli Devei Arunachala. This is a verse that can be interpreted in several ways, but one of the ways of interpreting it, Pullari Vedare, what is base knowledge or false knowledge? Nallari Vedare, say what is real knowledge? Be gracious to embrace me to attain the real awareness. That's one meaning. Another meaning is Pullarivu means a very low state of mind. Nallarivu is a very elevated state of mind. When your grace possesses me, what does it matter whether my mind is impure or pure? That is the meaning. And Sadhu Om used to give an analogy to illustrate this, this meaning. He said, when the Ganga is in flood, it flows into the streets of Kasi. And then and it washes everything away towards the sea. So when it floods the streets of Kasi, all the gutters get washed away to the sea. So whether it washes pure water or impure water, it all gets washed away to the sea. Like that, when your grace possesses me, what does it matter whether my mind is pure or impure? That's one way we can interpret this verse. So Arunacha's grace will completely transform us. So whether we are low or high, he will, once his grace is once his grace possesses us, we will be completely transformed. So when we read these verses of Aksharamaya, we need to understand the bhava. This isn't Bhagavan when he says about a fruit that is ripe. He's not talking about, he's not evaluating himself. He's just saying, now you've taken me away from my home. I'm now ready to be embraced by you. You embrace me. You unite with me and make me one with you. Why when I'm in this ripe condition, why are you continuing to delay?
So it shouldn't be interpreted as sort of an arrogant self-evaluation, or
No. It's not at all that. It's not at all that.
So, Bruce, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I in some regards, I guess I'm the reason I put it specifically in terms of that verse, I appreciate very much relating to the latter verse, which is a little further into the poem, the 68 you mentioned, right?
Yes.
That context. I guess what I've been working on that, because from clearly the poem is written to benefit devotees, because Bhagavan is already.
That's from our perspective. From Bhagavan's
Yes.
perspective, his love for Arunacha was just gushing forth.
It,
We can say,
yeah,
according to a divine will, it happened so for our benefit, but not from Bhagavan. It was just a flood of love.
yeah, right. It was a flood of love, but I still feel like the same light that shines in Madurai is the same light that shines
Yes.
during the course of writing
Yes.
Aksharamanamala. So therefore, there is only one thing. And so I think that there's a teaching in each of these verses. At least I'm trying to dig in deeper than I accept that on a superficial level, it's using the metaphor of the Nayaki Bhavana, but I truly believe that I think that I'm trying to point at that deeper meaning by the way I responded to the verse with what I was saying. So, and then you're cross-referencing to a verse slightly further on seems to reinforce my point, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. But I've been working with another a Tamil-speaking devotee on these Aksharamanamala verses, and he's been pushing me to not just accept translations that the other devotees have made, but try to see it from my perspective. Does that make sense? So it's trying to dig deeper. Is it? And I'm trying to make I'm trying to do something here. I mean, whether it's I don't think it's a waste of time. I think it's yeah. And I hope by sharing, I hope it shares something for everyone.
Yeah,
as well.
That is, these verses of Aksharamala, they're very, very deep in meaning and implication, but they're primarily to be understood from the heart rather than from the intellect. Of course, we can give intellectual type explanations, but the real meaning, we can't understand Aksharamala just with our intellect. We need to understand it with our heart.
Yeah, I would say I'm not using my intellect.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much left anyways.
Right.
I believe I'm trying to use my heart.
Yeah, right, fine.
Good. Very good. Well, thank you, Bruce. And thanks, Michael. So let me go to the next question. It actually pertains to the verse. Satya Chalikri's it's probably trying to reinforce it. If one realizes that he is Atma and not anything else, like bodies, sensory organs, etc., then it's necessary to read more and more Vedantic texts.
Well, when we know what we actually are, there'll be nothing other than ourselves. So there'll be no Vedantic text for us to read. All these Vedantic texts are for us so long as we are mistaking ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. Because only when we rise as ego does all this multiplicity appear. So when we know ourselves as we actually are, there's nothing other than ourselves. These texts, I mean, there's no question of trying to understand the text. Once we know ourselves as we actually are, these texts are there to help us to know ourselves as we actually are. But from the texts themselves, we cannot know it. The texts point us in the right direction. They point out to us that we can know ourselves only by looking within. But if we fail to understand that and expect to get the knowledge, so many people think that you can get self-knowledge only from Vedanta texts. That is a complete misunderstanding of those texts, because what those texts actually are pointing at is that we need to know ourselves, and we can know ourselves. It's not knowing ourselves is not a knowledge like any other knowledge. We can gain other knowledge by studying books, but we cannot gain knowledge of ourselves by studying books. We can know ourselves only by being ourselves, being what we actually are. And no sastra, that it's not the kind of knowledge that you can get from books. Books are useful in pointing us in the right direction, but we won't get the knowledge from the books themselves. No Vedas, no Upanishads, no Bhagavad Gita, no Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, no Padeshundya, none of these texts can enable us to know what we actually are. They can point us in the right direction. That is what we need to understand. They're pointing us to look within. Tattvamasi, you yourself are that. Know yourself and you'll know that.
There we go.
Hmm.
Michael, my question is about that looking within the practice. So I found that other than in the morning and in the evening, I was having trouble remembering throughout the day to practice. So what I did was I set my timer on my watch for every 15 minutes. And when that would go off, I would just have a moment of practice to see, to turn the attention in. So whatever I was attending to, I would move attention from there to what I think is expanded awareness or inward or something like that. And it's a very different quality from when I just sit on my cushion in the morning and in the evening than throughout the day. And what I found is that in that place of expanded awareness where I could feel my attention, let's say I was reading something on the computer, then the timer would go off and I would move attention from what I was reading to just nothing, I guess, or the expanded awareness or what I would think of as self or Atma or whatever. I could hardly ever hold it there for longer. I couldn't, I was trying to hold that awareness even when I went back to activity, and I found I couldn't do that. That I can't like act in the world and also hold that for longer than maybe a couple of few seconds. And I guess I'm just wondering how then you practice throughout the day, or, is it just, Kumar would talk about, okay, when we're just waiting for the microwave, but you're really doing anything else. So I guess I'll just pause there and see if you have anything to say about that, or if I need to clarify anything.
Okay, well, definitely it requires practice. The more we practice, the more we'll be able to hold on to that. As Bhagavan says in the 6th paragraph of Nana, by practicing and practicing in this manner, for the mind, the strength to remain in its birthplace, that's in the source from which it has risen, will increase. So the practice is absolutely necessary. But there are many clues we can try and apply to try to remind ourselves to hold on to that awareness. One thing whatever we may be doing, who is doing it? I am doing it. So the awareness I is of a background, that is the screen on which all other activities take place. So without whatever is known, who knows it? I know it. So I is the base. So it's like you go to a cinema, you watch a film, you sit there for 2 or 3 hours looking at the screen. We are never seeing anything other than the screen. But it seems that we're not seeing the screen at all because we're interested only in the pictures. So we need to try to remember the screen, the background, the ground, the foundation of all this is this awareness I. It's good to practice while you're doing other things, trying to remember your own being. Bhagavan says in the 11th paragraph of Nana, he describes the practice as Swarupa Smarana. Swarupa Smarana means self-remembrance, or more precisely, remembrance of ourself as we actually are. Swarupa means what we actually are. So remembering our mere being, and he says, until one attains Swarupa, one's own real nature, if one holds on to nirantara, nirantara means unbroken, uninterrupted, unceasing self-remembrance, Swarupa Smarana, adu andre podam, that alone is sufficient. So we should try to hold on to that as much as possible, even in the midst of other activities. It's also good at other times when we are not involved in other activities, we can go deeper within, but we will not be able to go very deep within at times when we're free of other activities if we're not trying to hold on to that, even in the midst of activities. So the more we can hold on to means simply remembering our being. Who is doing this? To whom do all these phenomena appear? Who's experiencing this? Who's aware of this? That's not asking the question, but remembering that none of these things could appear, that they all appear to me. So without me, there would be no appearance. There'd be no world without me. So I am the base of all this. So that is, by thinking more and more in these ways, it helps us to remember it's not something, it's something that's ever available to us. It's something that we're always referring to. I know this, I did this, I'm saying this. So this I is, this I is so caught up in all these things, we mistake this I to be these things that it's caught up with, this person, this mind, this body. But we need to, by trying to hold on to this I more and more, we slowly separate it from all these upadis, these things that we now, upadis means, it's often translated as adjuncts or limiting adjuncts, but there's no exact equivalent in English for upadi. Upadi is something that another thing is mistaken to be. So now we are mistaken to be this body. We mistake ourselves to be this body. We mistake ourselves to be the mind. So this body and mind, these are upadis. They're not what we actually are. They're what we mistake ourselves to be. So we need to slowly separate ourselves from these things. And the way to separate ourselves is to hold on to this I as much as possible. So often thinking about these things is a great help in reminding us to hold on to this I. I'm not saying I'm not saying you'll be able to do it all at once if you think about these things, but with practice, we'll be able to hold on to this I more and more in the midst of other activities. Is that at all helpful, what I've said?
Yes, it's very helpful. And as I was practicing it as you were talking, the holding on to it, so much easier to do it when I'm not talking.
Exactly.
I bet there's a big lesson here somewhere, but but thank you.
There are times when it's easier, there are times when it's more difficult, but we need to practice as much. Bhagavan, whenever he talks about it, when he defines what he means by Atma-vichara, I read the 16th paragraph of Nana earlier. He says, when he defines what he means by Atma-vichara, he begins with the word sadakalamam. That means always. Always keeping the mind on oneself. That is Atma-vichara.
Yeah. I also think one last little thing I'll add before we move on to the next person is part of, I was looking at this at one time, it will be necessary to forget all that one has learned from Nanyar, and I think it is. And then what I have such a deep Zen Buddhist training that it feels what I'm having to forget is this training around directing the attention in a way, because I've been trained to really pay very close attention to where my attention is instead of just being with having the attention on the self. So it sort of has created another seer, another level of seeing that maybe, I think what I'm taking, one of the things I'm taking from what you're saying is that to let that go and just bring it here.
The only thing we need to attend to is to the one who is attending.
Yeah. So
that is ourself.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all. Here. Next question from Ram.
Hello, Michael. Good afternoon to you.
Good.
The question I have is following up on what Rebecca was mentioning. When we try to, we need to focus on I. So at that point of time, it's the ego I, right? For example, jogging. I work out quite a bit. So when I'm jogging, I try to focus on the I. Who is the one who is jogging? Then it goes to the body, and then the ego I is the initial one we focus on, right, as much as possible, and that is the one which takes us to the real I.
How many eyes are there?
The real I is only one, but it starts with the ego, correct?
Yeah, but are they two different eyes?
I think so. One is the
Well,
ego I, and one is the real I.
if ego is a different I, it's not going to lead you to a real I. There's only one I. That one I, when it is mixed and conflated with adjuncts, as I am Ram, then that is ego. Remove the upadis, and what remains is the pure I.
So help
No,
me
it's very, very important to understand it's one thing. Just like the snake and the rope, there aren't two things there. A snake, and underneath the snake there's a rope hiding. No, it's only one thing. What actually is there is a rope. But we wrongly see that rope as a snake.
Right.
So just like that, ego is nothing but the one I. That is why in Vedanta they talk about Jiva Brahmaikya, the oneness of Jiva and Brahman. They're not two different things. That is in that famous statement of Shankara, Brahma Satya, Brahman is real, Jagat Mithya, the world is unreal. Jivo Brahmeva Napara. Jiva is nothing other than Brahman. So what we now experience as Jiva, this ego I, as you call it, this is nothing other than Brahman. But there's only one I. Now that one I we're experiencing as if it's this person we take ourselves to be. So we call it ego. When we experience it as it actually is, then we call it Brahman. But it's the same I. That's very, very important to understand.
So when I'm jogging, I figure out who is the one who is jogging.
That is, what is jogging is the body. You say, I am jogging because you're mistaking yourself to be this body. So rather than who is jogging, who is experiencing this jogging? To whom does this jogging appear?
Okay.
Because we want to move our attention away from the body and mind back to the one who is experiencing all these. This is what is called Drisya Viveka. We need to distinguish the knower from everything that is known. The body, the mind, these are all Drisya. We are the Drik.
Okay.
We have a witness. Who is the one who is jogging is the body. The one who is experiencing the jogging is the witness. You are the witness, not the body. Because of your identification with the body, you experience it as I am jogging. But who is it who is experiencing it as I am jogging? So we are trying to separate ourselves from all these phenomena. That's why Bhagavan says, whatever appears, to whom does it appear? That's how we separate ourselves from the appearance. This person we take ourselves to be, this jogging, this talking, this thinking, all these activities, these are all part of Drisya. Our aim is to hold on to the Drik, that which knows all these things. That which knows all these things is ego. But if we hold on to it firmly enough, if we look at it closely enough, we will find it's nothing but Brahman. That
Right.
is
The
underlying reality.
last part didn't happen yet, but yes, I'm working towards that.
Yeah.
The second is, we do say grace is there, and we also say grace is there all the time. So do we need to even bother about grace? It's there anyway. So I don't know what help it does, but grace is there for everyone all the time.
Yes, but grace is always pulling our attention inwards. We are resisting grace by going outwards. So we need to yield ourselves to grace. We need to allow ourselves to be pulled inwards. From our point of view, it looks like we have to make effort to go inwards. But the effort we're making is actually, the effort to go inwards is necessary in order to stop ourselves resisting the grace. So by trying to hold on to self-attentiveness, we are yielding ourselves to the inward pull of grace.
Right.
So we need to stop resisting, stop rushing outwards. And the only way to stop rushing outwards is to hold on to self-attentiveness.
Michael.
Yes?
There's another point that I would like to ask in relation to what Ram is suggesting. Now, the actual physical act of jogging or doing the activity, like Giri Pradakshina, if you want to say, you know, the body is being engaged in the walking activity or the running activity, and the result is that it does quiet the mind down naturally. And so I think that it sometimes that in those, you know, spaces, I think as we identify with the body, those activities calm us, you know, like a breathing exercise in a sense might also calm us temporarily to help us focus a little bit better. So I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, it's obviously not, the point is not to do the activity to get to the next step, but if in, you know, under certain circumstances, so, you know, that's all I'm.
Okay. Well, if we do any activity that calms down the mind, we then have to make use of that calmness by turning within. But we don't have to calm down the mind before turning within, because the most effective way to calm down the mind is to turn within.
Is to turn within, right? Exactly. Yeah. That might apply to what Rebecca was saying too. Am I correct?
Yes.
Michael, this is Barbara. When I turn in and I say, who is this I actually experience it. And when I experience it, it drops. And I immediately feel a gush of energy.
Right. That gush of energy is something that appears. To whom does it appear?
No, but it's a gush. It's like there's nothing appearing anymore. I mean, it's like a welling up of the self.
Right. But anything that is experienced, as anything that can be described in any way, anything that is visesha means what is new, what is special, what is distinctive, is not ourself. What we actually are is nirvisesha.
I understand that, but it feels I'm explaining it because we're using words.
Yes,
but there are no words when that comes gushing up. It's just like what Muruganar keeps explaining keeps talking about. And I read his work every morning, and it makes me feel more comfortable with that feeling.
Right.
So that's the feeling I try to hold on to. And as I practice it, it does come more easily.
Okay.
No question.
Okay.
No question.
Just so long as what you're holding on to is what is permanent, not anything that appears or disappears.
It is permanent.
It is permanent. Okay. Right.
It is permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is permanent is only ourself.
Right. But what I also experience, or what I'm also very aware of, is that unless you surrender completely, you don't get that gush. So, it is
yes.
surrender.
Yes.
And sometimes I think if you don't go deeply enough, you get discouraged because you don't feel that. You don't have that. You don't get into the sense of permanence.
Yes, yes. But we need to see beyond that is what we are is always, I mean, the one thing what we need to recognize is that we are always, there's never a moment when we're not aware of ourselves.
Correct.
We're always aware of ourselves.
Correct.
So we're not looking for any Visesha Anubhava, any new experience. We are looking for what is ever present.
I understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can't get to it without complete surrender.
No, you can't. And you can't, complete surrender is not possible without holding on to I.
Correct.
Because
Thank you.
the nature of ego is to, so long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we rise, stand, and flourish as ego.
Right.
That is, the very food on which ego survives is attention to things other than itself. So when ego attends to itself, that is, when we as ego attend to ourselves, we thereby subside. So the only way of surrendering, I mean, surrendering completely, surrendering that which is trying to surrender, is to hold on to it, to be self-attentive. That is the key to complete surrender.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
This holding on to the I experience, so far till I came into the Ramana way, it was taken for granted that it was there. I never asked the question, but now consciously I'm trying to investigate who that experiencer or who is the witness of this. Till now it was almost taken for granted. I mean, it's happening and I was helplessly going along with the thoughts. But now I understand that there is a witness to it, and if I investigate that, then the thoughts are going to subside.
Yeah, but it's not even there is a witness. You are the witness. That we need to distinguish ourselves as the witness from everything that we experience. Witness means the experiencer. Now we're using witness in the sense of experiencer. So we are the experiencer. We are not anything that is experienced.
Gotcha. Thanks, Michael.
We are the drik, not the drisya.
Right. Thanks, Michael.
But to distinguish the drik from the drisya, we need to hold on to self-attentiveness. In that way, we slowly separate ourselves. We break the bonds of that are tying us to all these upadhis.
And anything that I'm seeing, the drishya, which is including yourself, Kumar, everyone, is just
including Ram. Ram is also drisya. All the thoughts, the feelings, everything, all is drisya.
Okay, which is all unreal.
All unreal.
Right.
And it appears and disappears. Whatever appears and disappears is by definition unreal.
And the mind asking for whether I made progress or not is also a trick of
that activity of the mind is also drisya.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Yeah. I think I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, I have two questions. Now, staying with the questions about the practice. So one of the things that I find challenging is not suppressing thoughts. Like with Bhagavan saying, let the thoughts come and go. And what that turns into for me is thoughts about the practice. So I am in a struggle with my thoughts constantly, trying to push them out and let in thoughts about the practice. thoughts like, I need to do this, I need to get this right. So how does one sort of, at what point do we bring ourselves to, sorry, let me rephrase that. How do we get ourselves to the point where the thoughts are coming and going? You're not attending to the thoughts, but witnessing them.
No, it's not a matter of witnessing the thoughts. So long as we're witnessing the thoughts, that means we're attending to the thoughts. We don't have to try and resist the thoughts, because in order to resist the thoughts, we're attending to them. All we need to do is attend to ourselves. When we attend to ourselves, the thoughts will automatically subside, because no thought can rise without our being aware of it. That is, thoughts arise in our awareness. So only when we attend to them are we aware of thoughts. To the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we are thereby withdrawing our attention from other things. So we don't have to. Why Bhagavan says don't worry about thoughts? He's not saying that he's saying we just shouldn't be concerned about them. Our only concern should be, to whom do all these appear? Who am I who is experiencing all these thoughts? That doesn't mean even asking that question. That means we need to turn our attention back to the one to whom all these thoughts appear.
Okay. And
so
let
the thoughts appear, let them disappear. That's not any concern of ours. Thoughts are no concern of ours at all. We are concerned in knowing the reality of the thinker. The thinker means the one who is experiencing all the thoughts.
Right. Okay. And then the other question I have is related to our topic today about, knowledge.
Yes.
Acquiring knowledge. So one of the things that I was thinking about was that at times it is very exhausting reading all of Bhagavan's literature, because, to his credit, he's very consistent. He is pretty much saying the same thing in many different ways.
Yeah.
And so what is it that compels a person or a devotee to read that literature and be captivated by it again and again, even though it's the same sort of persistence on self-inquiry again and again? And then there are also those of us who do not have that degree of appreciation for metaphors and poetry and, so what it is Bhagavan probably trying to explain self-inquiry to different people at different times, with different metaphors. And I mean, some of us just don't have that literary sort of bent of mind and appreciation for that. What is to be found in I suppose, continuing to read that literature?
Constant reminder of what we need to be doing. If you can keep your attention on yourself throughout the waking and dream states, there's no need to read any of Bhagavan's works. But if you find your attention is slipping away towards other things, and you're forgetting to attend to yourself, reading Bhagavan's work constantly impresses upon us the need to be being more and more persistent in being self-attentive. That is, if we really read Bhagavan's works, as you say, Bhagavan is always pointing at one thing alone and one thing alone. He's constantly pointing to a need for us to be self-attentive. So we don't have to read many things, just read any one teaching. It'll remind us to turn our attention back to ourselves. That's how we should read.
Yeah.
That is, truly speaking, we talk of Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, but they're not three watertight compartments. Sravana literally means hearing. In order to hear, you need to listen. So we need to pay close attention to what Bhagavan is saying. And we need to make sense of it. So when we read something, in order to understand it, we need to think about it. So the Sravana and Manana go on side by side. And if you really to understand what he's talking about, you need to attend to what he's talking about, which is I. So the Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, if they're done properly, the Sravana will automatically lead to Manana, which will automatically lead to Nididhyasana.
Right. And then which would you say is Bhagwan's most direct, I mean, apart from who am I, which is the sort of the literature that I do read more often, also because it's easily available, it's brief. I tried Guru Vachaka Kovai. I do it with the group, but it is pretty dense. So which would you say, other than who am I, is the go-to for like a complete no-nonsense reminder, you have to do this for peace?
I have a problem. When I read any of Bhagavan's works, that is the best work. So at the moment I've been translating Arunachashtakam. So for me, Arunachashtakam is tops. But if I start reading Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is tops. But if you want that is Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is an incredibly important work. That is, but then any work, if you think that is, they're all, as you say, they're all saying essentially the same thing. Maybe they're addressing slightly different points of view, but the underlying message in all of Bhagavan's works is the same. So whichever appeals to you at that moment, and in my experience, whatever I read is what is appealing to me most at that moment.
Yeah, I suppose, and I'm going to wrap it up with this. There is a degree of frustration because perhaps the practice is neglected at times. So it could be that, grace has like a foolproof way. You're not going to go forward till you practice. And it could be just that.
Well, I think if we're honest with ourselves, we will all admit our practice is not sufficient. If our practices were sufficient, we would be finished. So we will all feel that our practice is insufficient. So we should be practicing more and more and more. That is the underlying message of Bhagavan's teaching. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
There's no shortcut. Bhagavan's works are a great support.
On you to finish, so then we can have a realized being between us.
There's only one realized being. You are that. Know yourself and you'll know the only existing realized being.
Thank you, Michael.
Right.
Thank you, Michael.
I was just going to say one other thing. That is, reading Bhagavan's works, thinking about Bhagavan's works, are not a substitute for self-attentiveness. They're a support for self-attentiveness. But self-attentiveness is what is absolutely important.
Right. Bruce, go ahead.
Absolutely important means absolutely essential.
Right.
So trying to go a little deeper with the fruit, the fruit analogy. In the Nayaki Bhavana, there's a problem of desire, and the devotee wants the positive acceptance of the divine, right? So, but that obviously reflects an externalized God, right? So
not necessarily.
Okay.
That is, we can understand that God is nothing other than ourself. But so long as we rise as ego, we seem to have separated ourselves.
Hmm.
So, but we can't reunite with that one from whom we have seemingly separated ourselves
Hmm.
as something external to ourselves. It is what is always with it. It's our own reality. So
Right.
it is we talking to ourselves as we actually are.
Exactly.
The lover is ego. The
Yep.
beloved is the reality of ego. So it is not an external. Bhagavan is not praying to an external God. Though Arunachal is there in an external form, Bhagavan is repeatedly saying, "There's great Arun the hill who shines in the heart."
Exactly. So what, and you're emphasizing my exact point, which is it's not like a beauty contest that's based on external signs or markers of
No.
beauty. It's clearly
The inward melting of the heart.
exactly. Okay, thank you.
Right.
So Michael, thank you. I still see you as the radio of Ramana, expressing what we're up to in self-awareness. And I want to go back to a session a few years back, and we had a distinction. So my question is, what is the distinction between self-attention and the following: ceremony, pilgrimage, and ritual, such as chants, yoga, etc.? I heard your response before that rituals are okay. However, they slow the intention of self-awareness. The analogy used in your response was self-attention is the express train to self-awareness, whereas ritual is the local. They're both going in the same direction to the same destination. However, self-attention is the primary access. So I was pondering that the other day, and I want to travel to India. Is that in the category of ceremony, ritual, or whatever? And should I just stay where I am and use that time and energy for self-attention? Or is there something I can benefit from in traveling to India?
If there's something you can benefit from, you will travel to India. It will be there if it is necessary for you to travel to India, you will travel to India. Your destiny will shape things. Your destiny will drive your intellect to buy that ticket and travel to India. You need not worry about these things. That is, Bhagavan puts it very, very clearly in the 13th paragraph of Nana, when that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. That means karyas means in this context, whatever needs to happen, whatever ought to happen, whatever we need to do, whatever we ought to do, that supreme divine power is that one supreme divine power is driving all these things. It's making things happen as they're meant to happen. So when such is the case, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to it, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? You need not concern yourself with these things. If it is Bhagavan's will that you should go to Tiruvannamalai, if it's beneficial for you, he will drive your intellect in such a way to prompt you to go and buy the ticket and to get the visa and to do whatever else is necessary, and you will go. If it is not necessary, if he's not ordained it in your prarabdha, however much you may want to go, you won't be able to go. So we need not concern ourselves with these external things. They will happen as they're meant to happen. What we need to be concerned about is turning our attention within.
Thank you.
And regarding what you said about the express train and the passenger train, very different analogies that can be used, but that analogy by itself is incomplete. However much rituals you do, you can be doing rituals for trillions of lifetimes. You will not thereby attain self-knowledge. In order to attain self-knowledge, there's no way other than self-attentiveness. What we gain by rituals or any actions, as Bhagavan makes clear in the early verses of Upadeshandaya, if we do the rituals not for any gain, but just for the love of God, that's what he calls in verse 3 of Upadeshandaya, kartano karkam nishkarmya karma. Nishkarmya karma means action without, not motivated by desire. So what's it motivated by? Kartano karkam. You're done for God. In other words, implied done for the love of God. So if you're really doing your puja or your japa or your dhyana for no reason other than for the love of God, that will purify your mind and show the way to liberation. When he says it will show the way to liberation, it means it will make you, it'll give you the clarity to recognize that the way to liberation is not doing anything, but just being as you are. And in order to be as we are, all we need to do is to attend to ourselves. Because attending to anything other than ourself is an activity. Attending to ourself is a cessation of activity. Because to the extent to which we attend to ourself, we as ego, the doer, subside. And when the doer subsides, the doing subsides along with it. So we then remain in Satbhava, the state of being, as he says in verse 9. So this puja, japa, and dhyana, these external things, all, if they're done with love and not for gaining anything, but just for the love of God, they will purify the mind. And the benefit of that purity of mind, it will enable us to recognize that we cannot know God or cannot know ourselves by doing anything, but only by being as we actually are. And we can be as we actually are only by attending to ourselves.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question. Is there any correlation between karma as far as your thoughts, deeds, actions in the present phase of your life or present moment, or and the success related to the path of self-investigation?
Absolutely none. That
Okay.
is, karma cannot give liberation. Bhagavan says that very clearly in the second verse of Upadeshandaya. Because action bears fruit. Though the fruit of action is transient, that is, when you experience the fruit of any action, that fruit is finished. But action, the action has a twofold result. One is the fruit, which is what we experience as destiny. The second is the seed. The seed is the vasana. So by doing action, we nourish those vasanas to do the same actions again and again and again. That is, by doing action, we do action. If we're doing action for the fulfillment of the desires, we're just pouring petrol on the fire, kindling the desire more and more and more, and there's no end to it. So karma does not give liberation. He says very clearly. In fact, in the Sanskrit version of verse 2, in verse 2 of Upadeshasaram, he says, Gati Nirodhakam. It obstructs liberation. So karma cannot give liberation. Karma is finite. The fruit of karma is finite. So liberation is not something finite, it's infinite. So you can't get an infinite result from a finite cause. So karma has no connection. The only way karma can contribute towards that if it is done without desire and for the love of God.
Nishkamya karma.
Nishkamya karma.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
And that nishkarmya karma, it will purify the mind. That is, not the action will purify the mind, but the love for God with which it's done. That love is what purifies the mind. And in that, a purified mind is a clarified mind. In that clarity born of the purification, we understand that liberation cannot be attained by doing anything, but just by being as we actually are. And we can be as we actually are only by attending to ourselves.
Good. Thank you, Michael.
Kumar,
That-
I have a question, Kumar. Just last question.
Okay, go ahead.
If you can permit
Sure.
me, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I was just thinking now, this experiencing and acting, are they a same action? Means you are doing and experiencing. Are they same? Are we talking about the same thing here?
No,
Or they are two things?
no. They're very closely related, but in terms of karma, the action you do, driven by desire, that is the karmiya karma, the actions we do under the sway of our vasanas, they are called agamya. What we are given to experience is prarabdha. That is the fruit of the agamya. The fruit not of agamya in this lifetime, but of past. That is, whatever we do in this lifetime is not going to change an iota, but what has been destined, what has been destined to happen.
So my exact question was something different, not on the law of karma. Suppose I am cycling. I'm on a cycle.
Yes.
So I feel that I am doing that action of cycling.
Yes.
But without experiencing that cycling, that action is not taking place. So my idea is that I am cycling, but without experiencing that cycling, I'm not cycling. So that experiencing and doing are the same thing here. That is what I was trying to.
They're very closely connected. Yes, yes.
That way I was saying, sir, not at the
Yes.
the law of karma level.
Yes.
At the
That
at
is,
the very
if we separate ourselves, to the extent to which we separate ourselves from the instruments of action, that means mind, speech, and body. If we that is as the knower of these things, we are just experiencing. We're not actually doing anything. But the whole problem is, as ego, we identify ourselves with the instruments of action, this mind, speech, and body. And so we feel we are doing. And if we separate ourselves completely from these things, then the experience will come to an end. But there'll be no one left to experience it.
I got it, sir. So in a way, the doership is also basically experience-ship only.
No,
Basically,
when we talk about doership and experiencership, we need to distinguish. When we're talking about doing, that is, yeah, we need to distinguish our doing from our experiencing. But that is, we're a little jumbling up things here. That is, you can't do any action without experiencing I am doing the action.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yes, but when we're talking about experiencership, we are talking about the experience. They're very closely related, but we need to distinguish otherwise we get into a confusion. We're confusing the agamya and the prarabdha. They had two distinct things. So what we do with under the sway of our vasanas, that is agamya, that is doing. What we are given to experience, that is the prarabdha. So we are doing actions and experiencing the fruit of the action. So that distinction we need to understand. But of course, we can't do any action without experiencing ourselves doing action. But that's not what is meant. That's not what is meant when we're talking about doership and experiencership. We are.
It's the eventual impact.
Let's not complicate things. We don't have to analyze too deeply. If we try to analyze too deeply, then we just get into an unnecessary confusion.
Do we need to even understand all this, or can we?
No, we don't need to understand this. The only thing we need to understand is who am I? That we need to understand. We need to attend to ourselves. But the reason we are taught, the reason Bhagavan taught us the law of karma is to make us understand that we need not concern ourselves with karma. What is going to happen is going to happen. What is not going to happen is not going to happen, however much we try. So there's no point in trying to experience this or avoiding experiencing that. The only thing we need to, because what we experience, it's all, as I was saying earlier, it's drishya. We are trying to know, who am I the experiencer, the drik? So let's not worry about doership or experiencership. Who is I who feels I am doing? Who is the I who feels I am experiencing? That is what we need to be concerned with.
When I'm in the grips of
can I just finish saying? Sometimes over-analyzing things, we're creating confusion. We don't need to analyze all these things. We need to. That is, manana is a. It's a very subtle process. We need to understand what we need to analyze and what we don't need to analyze. If we start analyzing unnecessary things, if we just create, we are thinking about things other than ourselves. What we need to attend to is ourself. So yes, in a certain sense, we can't do anything without experiencing that we're doing it. But by saying then that doership and experiencership are the same, we are just confusing what is the law of karma is meant to distinguish what we do from what we experience. What we experience is the fruit of what we do. But of course, we can't do without experiencing. If you get into that, then we're just creating unnecessary confusion for ourselves.
So my question originated from your today's talk earlier. Somebody asked a question, who is jogging? Who is jogging? You said it is not a proper question. You should investigate who is experiencing this jogging.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
My question came from that angle, sir.
Yeah, but even if you investigate who is jogging, because you experience I am jogging, but the whole point is turning our attention back to I. Attend to the I that now experiences itself as I am jogging, if you want to put it that way. But the point is attending to I, not worrying about the jogging or anything else. So we need to be very clear about what our aim is. Our aim is only to attend to I.
So our lakshya is I only. It's not body, it's I. It's always the I. The target of our attention is I, not the body.
Yeah. The reason I said asking who is jogging, then we are jogging is an activity of the body, so our attention is going to the body. That's why I said, rather than saying who is jogging, who is experiencing this jogging? To whom does this jogging appear?
So my question came from that angle.
Yes. But that's the whole point is to turn our attention back to I.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So
thank you.
we are in the grips of fear, anxiety, some very strong emotions when we are getting carried away. Even in the middle of that maelstrom, we can still investigate to who is the one experiencing these hard emotions.
Exactly. That's why this question, this clue Bhagavan has given us, to whom, it is such a precious clue. If we understand this clue correctly, we can apply it under any circumstances.
But it's very hard when those hard emotions are hitting.
It may be hard, but otherwise we allow ourselves to be carried away by these things. If we don't try to investigate to whom, we get carried away by these things, then we suffer the consequences. To the extent to which we can hold on to ourselves, the one to whom all these things appear, one who is experiencing all these things, we thereby, at least to some extent, or to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby separate ourselves from this, all these emotions, pain or anxiety or whatever it is.
In the morning, especially, I have a lot of fear that something bad is going to happen, but I don't know what, there is no data to support it. But in the middle of that emotion, I still need to investigate who is the one who's getting that thought.
There's very good data to support it. One day, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe after 10 years, or maybe after 50 years, we're going to die. So let's remember, death is waiting to catch us at any moment. If we take ourselves to be this body, this death will swallow us. If we separate ourselves from this body, that is in an earlier version of verse 16 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, that is, Bhagavan wrote the verse and then he rewrote it in a slightly different form. The original form, he said, if we are body, time will swallow us. Time means death. But if we separate ourselves from this body, then we will swallow time. I can't remember exactly the words he says, but he says, if we are this body, we will be swallowed by time. If we know ourselves, we will swallow time. And time there means, kala means both time and death.
Right. Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. So with that, we'll conclude today's session, and I will see you next month. Thank you.